Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Passball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com. Once again, it's 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Of course, 3 o'clock Pacific time. Happy to be with you for another day talking about baseball, sports, and unifying America. We can recap some of the topics that we hit up this past week if you want to bring it up, whether it's through Facebook Live or through the feed on Periscope. There's a couple different topics I want to hit up today. Actually, I have an interesting thing that I want to get into in regards to how everybody in this country has been deceived. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Recapping a couple of things we talked about this week, the rules changes in baseball. First of all, how much do they make sense? There's obviously been some silly stuff going on there in regards to proposed rule changes, allowing for whatever reason how anybody could ever think that it makes any sort of sense to have somebody think that a team could set up their 3, 4, and 5 hitters or whatever they think is their best players to come up and bat at any point of the game, let alone in the ninth inning. It goes back to the silly ideas that were brought up earlier about potentially in the 10th inning or 11th inning or later to have a team start with a runner at second base. It's essentially some ideas that are brought up in regards to changing the game as it's played today. There's no way that there's any realistic chance that anything like that could happen. But we live in a world where we throw some ideas out. Sometimes we give random people a chance to speak, or maybe they shouldn't speak. But we can talk about that if you want. We can also talk about St. John's, a team that I told you I was going to jinx them. I felt pretty strongly that the team had so much momentum going their way, and it looked like it was going to be one of those Cinderella trips to the NCAA tournament. And what ends up happening is, of course, a tough loss last night at Marquette, which may have very well derailed any chance or any opportunity of them getting into the NCAA tournament. But I'm going to start out today by talking about something that kind of bothered me when I saw the way it played out. And if you follow the Olympics, obviously a lot of congratulations are meant for the USA women's hockey team who went out there and won the gold medal yesterday. And we knew the rules, the way they were set up, and we could have ranted about this, or we could have discussed this earlier at a time where, we understood that this could have been a possibility. But you have two teams that matched up pretty well, obviously well enough to, first of all, be in the gold medal game, playing against each other, playing with all the pride of their own countries on the line. And the thought that it could possibly come down to, all right, what happens if the game is tied? What happens if a winner has not been decided by the time any sort of regulation play has been finished? And we go to what we've seen throughout the regular season in hockey and the National Hockey League, the possibility of a shootout. And you got games where, we're looking just for points in the NHL, and you just want the game to be over. Get ready for the next one. If a game ends in a shootout, so be it. Well, in the playoffs, NHL teams understand that the rules are changed a little bit. You don't have shootouts determining playoff games, let alone playoff series. But in the Olympics, we seem to look at something which in some cases is a bigger stage. We talk about the NHL, or we talk about the KHL, or games as they're played, in Europe and Russia. And the importance of being the champion, the importance of earning a championship. And we're not going to do it over, let's say, a flip of a coin. We're not going to do it in a professional sport based off of a shootout. So why would the Olympic Committee allow for a gold medal game be determined by a shootout? And listen, I'm happy for the USA women. They did a great job. Obviously, that last goal that was scored, which determined to be the game winner, was a work of art. But how can a gold medal game be determined on what is equated to a skills competition? I just don't think it's right. It's not right for the opposition. I think it takes something away from the team that won. As Nolan's outside getting ready to join the program. Welcome, Nolan. But how do we allow for a game that means so much pride that's at stake for a country, to be determined by something that's less than the value of battle, in this case on the ice? Does it taint the victory that was had by the USA women? Does it take anything away from how they were able to win? It obviously isn't their fault. We're not looking at something where, they did it in a devious way. They did it according to the rules or the way that a tie was to be broken. And I hope the Olympic Committee looks at this, because the Stanley Cup isn't to be determined by a shootout. They set the rules up different. There's this thing called sudden death. And if you're talking about one game that's going to determine it all, why would you not allow those women to play until a goal was scored? I mean, we could talk about the lack of significance, perhaps. But if we do that, then we're taking value away from these women that worked hard to get themselves into this position to compete. And again, once something is done, it's done. There's no way to change it. There's no way to replay the game and say, hey, maybe we should have played a sudden death type of period, whether it was one period or let's say, set it up to a certain time. And once that finishes, start another one. Make sure you give the people the proper break that they need between periods. And if you have a classic which goes 2 or 3 overtimes or 4 overtimes before somebody scores, you're talking about one of the greatest games ever played. But instead, we decide we're going to have these girls play a shootout where they're essentially just seeing who could get the puck past the goaltender the most amount of times, and obviously something that's compromised what we've seen on the ice prior to that. You saw a great showing by 2 teams, and it gets decided by a shootout. I don't think that's fair to the sport. I don't think it's fair to the people that are involved, and I don't think it's fair to the fans. I mean, you look in this case of 2 sets of women that played a absolute fantastic game. But if you're Canada, or if you were the United States, if you happen to lose, you're probably going to be upset with the way the game was decided. Once you decided to go to a shootout, you're at least a little bit tainting the opposition and the results of the game. Obviously, you're looking at a first gold medal in 20 years. You're looking at a group of women that busted their you-know-whats to compete, to get themselves at the possibility of being able to compete for a gold medal. And it's not their fault that the game didn't end in regulation. So this is screwed up by the Olympic Committee, but something that should never have to happen again. What is wrong to have a gold medal game that you set a sudden death up, at least in the finals, at least to determine the gold medal? This is the the epiphany of what is great about the Olympics, to have two countries, especially neighboring countries, the United States and Canada, going at it for the gold medal. And you have it be determined by a shootout? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to allow for something that is so significant and means so much to the women on both sides of the ice. And as I was watching that last night, to find, once that game was to be determined by a shootout, I felt bad for whoever was going to lose that game. And you know what? You could have set the tournament up however you wanted. And you could have had every other game, even some of the medal games or some of the games, in what's the tournament that to determine who the gold medal winner is. But to have the gold medal game to be won or lost by a shootout was an absolute disaster. And at some point takes away the joy that the U.S. women will be enjoying. Obviously, as time goes by, they're still going to hold their gold medal. They're going to take it with them wherever they want. Perhaps they could go on a tour, to different venues and events and be able to share, with people the excitement of the victory that they had. But right now, it just doesn't. There's something not genuine in it, and obviously, it isn't their fault. The fact that that game was tied at the end of the game should not be the fault of the women on the ice. It's how you set up a gold medal game to be determined by a shootout. The National Hockey League would not do that. All of their postseason games are sudden death overtimes. What's wrong with letting these girls, especially in the gold medal game where there's millions of people watching, they're on the national stage, they're on a world stage. People from all over the world are tuned in, watching a sport that very few, in regards to percentage, are following during any other time of the year, but it's the Olympics. You got people that probably don't know anything about hockey, but are interested or intrigued. They want to see the results. And these people have to be explained that the gold medal is going to be determined by some sort of skills competition. I don't think it was fair. I don't think it was fair to the winners. I don't think it was fair to the losers. I don't think it's fair to all the other women that competed in hockey in the Olympics. Once again, John Pielli, happy to be with you. If you want to just comment on the Facebook or Periscope feed, we'll try to keep you, I'll stay with you guys as long as somebody isn't deciding to troll. Trolls will completely be ignored. I wanted to talk about something that, fascinated me, because we're talking about the world of basketball. And obviously the Cleveland Cavaliers doing a lot at the trading deadline, kind of changing their team up. But their initial team that they put out there was expected to compete for an NBA championship. It was started, of course, the changes to the team as they got ready for this current season started with the trade of Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics. And, of course, that was something that took a lot of people by surprise. It wasn't expected. There was the announcement that Kyrie Irving in his camp, asked for a trade. Some thought it was, because of his relationship with LeBron James. Maybe he wanted to do it on his own. Maybe he felt that winning an NBA championship with LeBron James was something that, he didn't have enough power or something that he took with him. Whatever reason you wanted to think, led to Kyrie Irving asking for the trade. Because if he doesn't ask for this trade, it doesn't happen. If he doesn't ask for this trade, he's probably playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers this year, right now. He's part of the team with LeBron James and whatever other mixture is sit there with him. Are they succeeding? Are they doing as Cleveland is doing right now? Are they doing worse? Listen, that's all stuff that we could just speculate on. We don't know how things would turn out if Kyrie Irving is playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers right now or has been playing for the entire season. So he asked for this trade. We find out through the news today that there was a secret meeting held with the Cleveland Cavaliers front office. And I make a little bit of a comparison to LeBron James and the decision after he became a free agent, ends up deciding to sign with the Miami Heat, which, by the way, we could be looking at another decision after this season. And I hope, from a publicity standpoint, that people in LeBron James's camp are advising him not to go about it the same way, not to have a huge ESPN special, not to be willing to go out there and make it this reality TV show garbage, embarrassment, excuse for a program that they ended up having after LeBron James left the Cleveland Cavaliers and decided to go to the Miami Heat. But what the comparison that I see with this discussion that was held by the Cavs front office was kind of one of those what ifs. You know, maybe discussing all different scenarios and possibilities and interest as they get ready for the next season. Different things that we could do to get the team to be better. So it makes sense that one of the possibilities was, all right, Kyrie Irving, if he's traded, what do we do? What is the best move that, you know, they could do with that? Could they potentially get a little more back for Kyrie Irving than the value that he has on an NBA court for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Now, would that have been a silly move if they decided to just do it and do it in a different way than it ended up being turned out or ended up turning out? In other words, if the Cavaliers just traded Kyrie Irving and not had to wait for Kyrie to ask for the trade and respond to said request for a trade, could it have turned out a little differently? Now, once the statement was public that Kyrie wanted to be traded and some sentiments were put out there that the Cavaliers were willing to listen, I think that handicapped the Cleveland Cavaliers a little bit. Now, I thought the return that they got for him, Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder, and that first-round draft pick, I thought was a good enough return. Obviously, those two players that were added by the Cavaliers have since been traded themselves. But my question is, you know, had the Cavaliers decided to trade Kyrie Irving prior to Irving's request for a trade, could they have ended up getting potentially a better package? I find a little fascination in that, but reports are that the Cavs had this secret meeting, and I don't know if it was a typical end-of-the-season meeting. Remember, you know, exit discussions, exit interviews happen in all of sports, regardless of when your season ends. You know, we could talk about baseball, football, basketball, hockey. Once a team's season ends, there is an immediate discussion that's held by that front office, sometimes involving the coaching staff, sometimes involving ownership, sometimes involving players that are important factors on that respective team. Every team has an exit interview. If you miss the playoffs, you have a little bit of a discussion on what's best to do next year. If you make the playoffs and lose in a certain round, whether it's a surprise that you ended up losing so early, whether you end up moving on a little further than you expect, there's exit interviews that happen, you know, within a team afterwards. The Cavaliers' exit interviews happened as soon as their season ended, as soon as they were eliminated in the NBA Finals by the Golden State Warriors. So there's nothing wrong with discussions to lead to just about anything. The Cavaliers could have discussed anything that they wanted to during these exit interviews. Apparently, word gets out that Kyrie Irving was discussed as possibly being traded. And I don't think the Cavaliers would have done anything wrong by discussing this. But once again, one of the things that have followed the Cavaliers for a while now, and I thought this applied just to during the season, there's somebody in the PR department of the Cleveland Cavaliers that needs to lose his job. You know, that expression, loose lips sink ships, could have applied to the New York Mets under Omar Minaya. There was something that happened to leak a lot to the media in regards to important information that was relevant to that team. The Cavaliers have the same problem. And now from a public relations standpoint, somebody needs to stand up and say, who is it that's allowing this information to leak to the media? Because nobody else amongst the other NBA teams had any classified information that involved their exit interviews, which I just stated, every single team in the NBA had an exit interview, probably for the exception of the Golden State Warriors. They didn't need to have one. As some time went by, I'm sure they had a chance to revel in their NBA championship, their second in 3 years. But they probably didn't have a need for one. But the Cleveland Cavaliers and the rest of the teams in the NBA all had one. So why are we finding out right now, on the 22nd day of February, that the Cleveland Cavaliers discussed trading Kyrie Irving in their exit interview? Because we don't have any other information available about any other NBA team that discussed what they were going to do with any player. And there was a lot of moves made this offseason. You look at the amount of trades that were made. You look at the amount of transactions that were made. There was a lot of player movement. But we don't hear anything about any other team discussing any sort of trade within their own exit interview when there was probably a lot of discussion about certain players being traded. This obviously is, I hate to use this term, hot topic in the NBA because it involves Kyrie Irving and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But Carmelo Anthony got traded. Several other players in the NBA got traded. Why wasn't any privy details from other teams' exit interviews made public like this situation with Kyrie Irving and the Cleveland Cavaliers? So what has to happen, just like in a situation that involved the Mets years ago and other teams that had a hard time keeping their lips sealed when it came to, important information that was supposed to be held confidential. When information like that starts to get out, the public relations director is under fire. When information like this starts to get out, there's people in the organization that have to be under fire. The more that information like this gets out, and now we're having a series of issues that are going on in regards to public relations and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So how much is it the responsibility of the top? How much of the responsibility is it of all other people that are involved in the organization? Is there somebody that has a prestigious position that can't keep his mouth shut? Because these are things that are supposed to be kept in-house. And whether the discussion of the Cleveland Cavaliers' entire exit interviews was centered around Kyrie Irving or not, it's information that should not be put out into the public. And whoever's sharing this information needs to be held accountable for it. The Cavaliers, the more the season goes on, and listen, we could talk about whether they're a better team after these trades that they made at the trading deadline or not. They may be. They could be in a position where, they, from a unification standpoint, they may be able to compete a little better. They've won 4 straight games. They seem to be, at least in a peaceful sense, more of a unified team, a team that seems to be playing better together. Maybe these trades that were made at the trading deadline needed to be made to put them in a better position, to have them more of a bonded team. They sit, with the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference right now, trailing not only Boston, who happens to have the 2 seed now after losing 3 straight, but the Toronto Raptors, who are, on fire now with their 7 straight wins. I don't know how it's going to play out for them, but to talk about this Irving point, because I think this is an important thing, is another sign that the unification really isn't there in that Cleveland front office. And I don't know how much is put on the new general manager, Kobe Altman. I don't know how much goes right up to the owners. But there is a disconnect that's existing there. And from the players in the locker room who are allowing information to get out or getting information out that's supposed to be held confidential, players discussing amongst themselves that they don't believe they have the power or the ability to win an NBA championship, that's something that shouldn't be let out to the media. So, okay, you could say, hey, there was a mistake. There was a lapse somewhere. All is forgiven. But now we go out, and I don't know if there's people that are digging for this. And obviously the media wants, to get every story that they possibly can. If they smell a little blood, they're going to go for it. But how much responsibility should be put on an organization for allowing a story like this to come out? Because no other NBA team had information about their exit interviews from last year made public. And neither did the Cleveland Cavaliers up to this point. So maybe there's somebody in the media that did a stellar job in regards to reporting and got this story out. If that's the case, well, you know what? Give credit where credit's due. But you put this on top of what happened in that Cleveland locker room that allowed, for whatever reason, information to go out there, and information that was supposed to be held and kept within house out to the media about the discord that existed in that locker room and how there were players, multiple players on that team that didn't think that they could win an NBA championship with the players that they had. So you put that plus the only information that was ever released from anybody's exit interview from last year. I make the comparison about the steroids list from 2003 that was supposed to be held anonymous in Major League Baseball. Only Alex Rodriguez's name was released. There's something to that. Was that somebody in Alex's camp that allowed for that information to go out there? And if that's the case, I'd be pretty pissed off if I was Alex Rodriguez. And if I'm the Cavs right now, I got to be pretty annoyed. On the heels of a winning streak, a 4-game winning streak, which is taking place after they've made all these roster moves. I'm saying, number one, maybe as an organization, we just can't get out of our own way. Or number two, there is a cancer within our organization that we have to get rid of. Does it have to do with PR? Is it somebody in our front office? Is it somebody from the team that's leaking information out like this? If there is, it has to change. And somebody has to be held accountable for it. Once again, John Pielli, Pass Ball Show, happy to be with you. A couple of different things we're going to hit up in the world of sports before I get into my final rant for today. And I think my final rant of the day will probably cover a good 10, 15 minutes. But I want to continue to touch on issues going on in the world of sports. We touched a little NBA. We talked about, whoever it is that allowed for the discussion that was held internally with the Cleveland Cavaliers after their season ended about the possibility of trading Kyrie Irving and how much that may have led to the eventual trade of Kyrie Irving. It certainly led or had something to do with Kyrie Irving requesting the trade, which ended up sending him to the Boston Celtics. Not much going on in the NFL. Adam Vinatieri is coming back for the Colts. And I'll tell you, I always appreciate kickers because they obviously have a long shelf life. They have great stamina. Their impact on the game is very important. But from a physical standpoint, they're not taking shots to the head like the other players are. So I like seeing these kickers play for 20-plus seasons like Adam Vinatieri looks like he's about to for the Colts. Obviously he gets a chance, a new coaching staff, Frank Reich, the new coach, Andrew Luck potentially coming back through his injury. If he's healthy, obviously that team looks like they're going to be in pretty good shape. Free agency is going to hit pretty soon. There's going to be a lot of possibilities, especially in regards to quarterbacks. As we hit the halfway point here on the Pass Ball Show. Once again, John Pielli here with you. You got Kirk Cousins. You got all those top quarterbacks that are coming out through college. So teams have to think, do they want to bring in a veteran? Do they want to take a chance on one of these young stars? You obviously got Sam Darnold and Josh Allen out there, Josh Rosen. You know, they had Baker Mayfield, some very good quarterback, at least from a prospect standpoint. You know, we could go back in drafts of Christmas past and talk about some highly regarded quarterbacks that ended up not making an impact in the NFL at all. Jamarcus Russell, Ryan Leaf, Achilles Smith. Some names that we'll throw out there, Tim Couch. You know, some people right now won't even be able to believe that quarterbacks were drafted that high. A guy like Vince Young comes to mind, but, he came with a lot of star power with him. He lasted in the NFL a little bit longer than some of these other guys. So out of these quarterbacks that are coming out there, there's different perspectives from different people that think that there's different ceilings for each one of these quarterbacks. So if you're a team, and we could use the Jets as an example, how important is it to, number one, draft that quarterback that could be your quarterback for the next 8 to 10 years? And I don't like the discussion of 10 to 15 years because, we talked about Andrew Luck being such a sure thing. And from a talent standpoint, he was, and he still may be. But Andrew Luck, from the day his career started, there wasn't as much of a chance of him being a quarterback or the quarterback for 10 to 15 years. We look at Tom Brady. We look at Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, perhaps Aaron Rodgers. There's very few quarterbacks that can dominate for 10 years, let alone 15 years. So when we're talking about drafting that kid out of college that's going to be your franchise quarterback, let's take that shelf life and make it a little bit smaller. Let's talk about 8 to 10 years as opposed to 10 to 15 years. It's such a guarantee. It really isn't. Look at all these quarterbacks that have come out. I mean, I know you look at the Matt Ryans and the Matthew Staffords, and you say the likeliness exists that these quarterbacks could be, behind center for their respective teams, or at least in the NFL for 10 to 15 years. But we're watching quarterbacks drop left and right, and their impact on the sport being cut a little more short. We watch every year the surprise when we find out which players are retiring. We find out that there's 24, 25, 26-year-olds in the NFL that are retiring. And retiring because of the continuous contact that's involved, the head injuries, the information that's out there when we talk about CTE. But we still think, hey, we drafted Baker Mayfield or Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold, and a team that's drafting him is drafting their quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years. It's more about 8 to 10, and I wish we'd start referring to it at that. But lots of time to get into the NFL. Obviously, the draft, is quite a couple months away, or quite a bit of time away. But we will get into that a little bit as we move forward. Talk about Major League Baseball for a minute or two before I get into my major point that I want to get into today. I don't want to talk as much about the rule changes, but I think we can take some pride and take some, sanctity in the fact that there's going to be some live baseball action tomorrow. It obviously is the first day of spring training games. You're seeing teams announce what their first lineup's going to be. Obviously, it's going to look much different from what we're going to see opening day. But in off season, which in my opinion, and I don't know, tell me if you agree, disagree, seems like it's dragged on forever. And it's dragged on forever for this one reason. You still have top free agents that haven't been signed. There's going to be games played tomorrow, albeit on an exhibition level. Perhaps some teams are playing against non-major league teams, but there's still baseball being played. And Jake Arrieta is still a free agent. Mike Moustakas is still a free agent. Certainly the list of free agents that was there a week ago may not be there now with the signing of Hosmer, and perhaps a delay in the announcement of the Red Sox signing of J.D. Martinez. I'm being told, though, It's just a matter of the physical taking a little longer than usual, as opposed to anything that could derail the possibility of the signing. But baseball's off-season seemed to take forever this year. All because we were waiting for these announcements that we never really saw. But starting tomorrow, there's going to be Major League Baseball action. And this Major League Baseball action is going to continue until the All-Star break, which is in July. So you're looking at 5 months of continuous days where there's going to be baseball action of some sort. If you're a baseball fan, how can you not be excited about that? So, it's been a little while since I talked about something in regards to the third part of this show. And the past ball show is about baseball, sports, and unifying America. I've let it known about what my opinions are in regards to the world of politics. And I wish the world of politics would kind of just go away. And I have done everything I can to keep myself away from paying attention to political discussions, which means I don't watch very much news. I don't pay attention to very much news. I take bits and pieces of things that I think are important. And obviously, anytime that our country is in danger, anytime there's domestic terrorism going on in the country, whether there's a shooting, whether there's violence going on, I think that's important to everybody, regardless of your interest in watching news or interest in not watching the news. But one of the things that I haven't brought up yet is something that could very well touch home with each and every person that's out there. We are all programmed in some sort of way of what we believe is right and what we don't believe is right. We've been swayed, perhaps, through recent presidential elections or different social issues that have gone on in this country to be more passionate about certain things and less passionate about other things. But when we make a decision or we say this is our stance on said issue, we believe in our heart of hearts that it's our own decision. What if I told you that some of the things that we believe, some of the opinions that we have on certain important subjects were put in our head subliminally? And we look at the media, and you know that I want to declare war on the media. I don't consider myself part of the media in any way, shape, or form. The media has an ulterior motive in everything that they're looking to report. They know that they have a certain faction, whether their media is coming from one side or the other, or an independent side. They have a certain following. They have a certain set of people that they know they could go to for their sources. They have a certain part of the population of the United States of America at their fingertips. And they have people that they know they're going to be able to sway based off of their own opinion and their own agenda. So when people are out there saying, this is my belief, first of all, we know that nobody cares. Nobody cares about what your political beliefs are. Nobody cares about your reaction to the latest shooting. Nobody cares who you want to blame for anything. But what if I took a shot at the credibility of your own beliefs and told you that you were just following a company line, that you were just doing what you were told by people who have brainwashed you to believe what it is that you believe? There's a possibility, and I could say this could apply to every single person that's out there in the country, watching the show, not watching the show, believes this or believes that. What if the rhetoric of the media have brainwashed you to believe what it is that you believe, when you may not even believe that? You may not even take it to as far of a level as the extremist part of whatever's drilling it in your head is taking you. But what if you are a puppet? What if your actual thoughts and beliefs are being controlled for you? Think about that. I'm not going to go any further on this point. But once again, this is the Passball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com. And please, anything that's on your mind, please feel free. Share with me your thoughts. How about the possibility that could exist that there's somebody out there, whether it's in the news media, whether it's one of these cults, the terrorist groups that exist in the country, the Republicans or Democrats, that have sucked you into believing everything that they say and they tell you, to a point where you can't be yourself, where you can't have your own points and views. And what if you are sticking to a party line and there is something that impacts you a different way, that makes you believe something different than what the company or the corporation or the entity that's telling you what it is that you should be believing? And you stand up and say, I'm on this party line, but not in this particular instance. You have the narrative that's being thrown out there kind of spitting some venom at you. I think it's interesting stuff. But once again, I continue to say, this is a country that's based off of individuals and not groups. But we tend to segregate ourselves in our own groups. And we let people tell us that we are part of this demographic or this set based off of race, off of sex, off of religion, off of anything else. But we're having the power of the individual taken away from us. And it is time, it should be time, to bring out individuals. Because every single one of us is different. Every single one of us has a difference in a point of view. But we don't discuss it with ourselves enough. We tend to hang out in crowds and groups and talk about other crowds and groups. And it's not constructive. It doesn't get ourselves anywhere. You say, I belong to this, but this is essentially pulling the strings of what you are to think, what you are to feel, what you are to believe, what you are to be. And I hope we can get through this to a point where we can all be individuals and understand that one white man may have a difference in opinion than another white man. And the same applies for anybody. That we're not all judged as the same. And this goes into anything you want to talk about as applies to racism or sexism. Each one of us is an individual. Each one of us has the power, the ability to do great things. And we have a better chance of doing these great things if we're on our own and using our own talents and uniqueness and ability to accomplish said goals. Not hiding behind a quote-unquote demographic. We continue to reiterate the point that anything is possible for anybody. And we see situations and examples of people that, have different, issues going on, but can still accomplish great things. Once again, Passball Show here with you. MLB has announced that they're going to be going abroad again. The Oakland Athletics will open the 2019 season in Tokyo against the Seattle Mariners. And, of course, why would you not have a game in Japan and not have the Seattle Mariners? There's a lot of ties to that organization, to Japan, from the ownership. I thought that they would have a very good chance of signing Shohei Ohtani, and obviously they put a very good effort in there with Jerry Dipoto. Ohtani ends up deciding that he wants to go to the Angels. But I want to throw out there, and maybe I'll put a poll up on Twitter tomorrow. We'll kind of recap this point a little bit. Should Major League Baseball start every one of their seasons in a different country? Because they've done it in the past. Remember, the Mets and the Cubs started the season in 2000 in Japan. Could something like this help to take Major League Baseball as it exists and bring it throughout the rest of the world? We have the World Baseball Classic every 4 years. Baseball has obviously done a great job to get itself out in all different areas of the world. But what about opening day being in a different country each season? I think it would be fascinating. I think it would continue to build the game as it's been built throughout the entire world. But imagine a game starting, let's say, in Israel. Opening day, be there 1 year. Israel has obviously grown as a participant in the World Baseball Classic. They've been one of the more intriguing stories the last several years. How about Latin America? How about Europe? How about Major League Baseball's opening day being somewhere else in a different part of the world every single year? I'd be in favor of that. I think that would be pretty cool. We're going to be, I do want to apologize. Tracy Ringlesby was supposed to join the program today, and it was an issue that I had with my phone lines, so we couldn't do that this week. But he's going to be amongst the guests we're going to have on a program next week. We're still going to have Jerry Eisenberg at some point, David Bonson, the author of Crisis of Responsibility, will be joining the program. So we do have a series of some pretty good guests we're going to have on the program as we move out through the rest of the week. Trying to think of what I want to finish the program on today. We talked about college basketball earlier in the week, the Louisville situation, which I think is an embarrassment. It really is. It's a terrible effort by the NCAA and its powers to be. And, I've spent a good amount of one of the shows during the week talking about how ridiculous it is to say that you have the power, a power that is almost more powerful than God, because even God doesn't have the power to take away something that already happened. And what does it mean to the kids? They have this ring, they have this championship. The NCAA could say that it never happened, but it still happened. So what is the NCAA trying to prove? It just doesn't make any sense. Listen, we'll be back with you tomorrow, 8 o'clock, right here on Periscope, Facebook Live, and on demand on YouTube. God bless you, and as always, I'll see you on the other side.